sure how this is working. Hello, everybody. Layla here, Naked Truth Babe, coming to you with a little presentation telecourse about virus and your immune system. I'm doing this because there is obviously a big misunderstanding among a lot of people about these two things, and especially as it relates to this current pandemic that we're facing all over the place. So what I'm here to do is just to educate a little bit about virus itself and your immune system and things that you can do personally and recommend for those around you so that you can be better equipped to not only deal with this particular virus, but with any infectious virus, disease, and just your overall health. So I'm going to get started, and I'll be bouncing back and forth between my presentation and some live links so I can show you the source of a lot of the information that I've come across and the raw data of how I came up with this presentation for you. So let's get started. Here we go. Virus and your immune system, two often very misunderstood things. So let's talk about who am I and why should you care? You don't have to care. I'm the one who cares. So I'm just a very curious person, and I'm also not afraid to look into things, to ask questions, to question everything, and to look into stuff a little bit more deeply than what's being done. There's a lot of headlines, there's a lot of things being passed around person to person that aren't exactly all the way true. So I've become a really in-depth student of optimal health and biology. I've been a student of biology my entire life. In the last 6 years, I've become a very intense student of optimal health. I've been witness to a lot of suffering of my own and of others around me, family members and friends. I've witnessed the untimely deaths of a lot of friends at young ages. One of my brother and I's close friends when we were kids developed cancer, and then we watched him wither away and die at the age of 26. Another girlfriend died of breast cancer at 29, and many other friends suffering from cancers and other chronic illness or other acute infections and diseases, including my own. I've had my viral meningitis, I've had West Nile virus, I've had many sinus infections, tonsillitis, all kinds of different things happen, and wanting to understand, like, why is this happening? And is there anything I could do about it to prevent this from happening or to make it easier? So I've just witnessed an overall decline in the health of all beings, pets, people, and our environment, and I'm concerned for that, deeply concerned for that. I'm not a healthcare professional. I do not aspire to be a healthcare professional. I'm a regular person just like you. You can find all this information yourself as well. And I encourage you to cross-check out what I'm saying. Don't believe what I'm saying. Go do your own research. The problem that I find is that there's just a lot of misinformation out there, and often the powers that control the information or the display of that information are in bed with industry, and so it's really hard to sort it out. So you can trust that I don't make any money from this. This is just a public service that I want to do. This doesn't affect my health. I already know a lot of this, and I choose to practice it in my own life. I spend at least 15 hours a week studying health-related topics from top experts in the field. This particular week, however, I have spent 2 to 3 times that just educating myself on virology and looking at different perspectives as far as the current issue is concerned, to re-educate myself or consider other perspectives that I hadn't thought of, and then also just to refresh myself on what I already know to be true, as well as learn some new information that speak. So just know that I'm here to give you the truth as best as possible. And again, this is not a selfish thing. I don't have to do any. Because I could just with isolation. I feel more safe and healthy and vital when I am away from cities. So I plan on spending most of my time in nature. Let's get started. Where do I get my information? I target experts in the field. For this particular presentation, I studied a lot of the content about virus comes from the Columbia Medical School, Professor Vincent Racaniello. He has a podcast called This Week in Virology, and he does that with a number of experts and invites different people to come on and speak. I encourage you to look at his content and any of these people's content. I'll be providing links to all of their information if you want to spend the 50 hours like I have combing through it. By all means, please do. Health restoration is really where my focus has been in optimal function. So whereas most people in the medical field are studying disease and dysfunction, I focus on optimal function. So I want to find out who's optimally healthy and not having problems, and what are they doing, and how is it that they're able to remain in optimal health and vitality, and what is it that's different about them or their environments that creates that optimal health. So whereas most people in medicine look at what, disease and dysfunction, I look at the other way around. Of course, I've experienced dysfunction, and I do look at those things as they come across, and I can witness and see what's happening, and I can identify that by maintaining optimal levels. So that's where the virology comes from Columbia Medical School. The Price Pottinger Nutrition Foundation has been a major source for me of that optimal function. And there are so many health professionals that are associated with that foundation, and I encourage you to go check them out. The Vitamin D Council, the Sunlight Institute, PubMed, FDA, and CDC, whereas these are not my favorite organizations, they do have numbers that I have used in this presentation. Johns Hopkins University, Harvard University, The Lancet, US National Library of Medicine, and Merck Manual. So these are all what most people, the second half of that is all what most people would consider to be credible organizations. Sometimes they're credible, sometimes they aren't. There's times when, and I'll point some of those things out. So you have to take everything that you hear with what I heard recently, a boulder of salt, which I thought was funny, but it's true. You have to consider where it is a lot of these institutions get their funding from, and unfortunately, most of that is from the pharmaceutical industry, and there's a huge influence of how studies are done, what parts of studies get published, how the information gets manipulated. There's also financial and political forces at work too, which I won't get into right now. We're going to mainly just talk about the science of virus and your immune system. And then at the end, I'll give a couple of weird things that are going on that might have some influence over this. Another person I want to thank personally for my own improved health and for a lot of the optimal recommendations I'll be making is traditional naturopath and clinical nutritionist David Gedoff out of San Diego. I've learned a lot from this guy. He is a maven when it comes to optimal health and finding things that really work. I encourage you to take his courses, which he now has online and from home, and you'll learn more than you ever imagined from that guy. There's a ton of other like PhDs, MDs, NDs, and other professionals that I'll source information from and reference. And I also practice all these things on myself, and I learn from anecdotes from other people. So someone will tell me this is my experience, or this happened to me, or this happened to my family member. And I take those kinds of stories with me also and reference those. So that's where I get my information. I'll be linking to a lot of this stuff, and you can look at it all yourself and make up your own mind. I want to initiate independent thought and remove ignorance wherever I can. So here we go. What is a virus? Most people are confused about what a virus is. So this is a definition that came from Professor Raccaniello, which is kind of hard to understand. So I'm trying to make his very detailed and complex definition understandable. So an infectious, so it's infectious, obligate, it's obligated, intracellular, gets into your cells, parasite, it harms you, comprising genetic material, DNA or RNA. Most people know what DNA is and RNA is, often surrounded by a protein coat and sometimes a membrane. So more simply put, it's a protein shell with genetic material inside of it. These are passive agents, so they are infectious, but they're not active because they're not actually alive. And this is a distinction. You look in the news and it's like the virus is multiplying in this and that, and it's not true. It cannot proliferate without the use of an active live cell. And virus particles, which is a better description, is a particle. So, and there are different kinds of particles. Some of them are not infectious. The infectious particles are referred to as virions. And so there's two stages of existence for a virus. One is where they're an infectious particle, and then it gets activated once it attaches and is received by the cell, the live cell, host cell, and is in process of replicating. Then it becomes an active virus. But before that, it can't actually do anything. So viruses are not alive. They cannot do anything without a host. And we'll get into more about that. Here's some more facts about virus, which I did not know some of these things, and I'm happy to have learned some new things through my studies in the last week. So virus is everywhere. They outnumber in cellular life by 10 to 1. That blew me away. I had no idea. I didn't know that. The greatest biodiversity on the planet. Interesting. They drive a lot of biogeochemical cycles. So without virus, a lot of things wouldn't happen in the oceans and other places. It's very important. Can be beneficial. It can also be a source of pathogens. We tend to think of virus as a bad thing. And in this case, it can be, but in a lot of cases, it's actually beneficial. So virus is everywhere and infects all living things, plants included, more of them than any other organism. I didn't know that. So there's more than like our cells in our body. Like we have more virus. So daily we're encountering virus all the time, and we may not even know. And it's actually part of our human genome. So in our DNA code, virus is in there. So it's been around, and there's a lot of confusion about where virus came from, and they don't actually really know. They have theories, but no one really knows exactly how it originated. That's a whole topic for another discussion. There's a lot of theory about that, but we don't really know. So again, they're not alive. And they can exist. This is another weird thing. They can exist as non-infectious particles. I didn't know this either. So for instance, you could get different kind of testing that exists, but you could end up with a test that shows that there is virus particles that are not infectious. So it's interesting that there can be parts of the virus RNA there, or different pieces of a virus that aren't actually infectious. They don't have all the faculties to be infectious. So there's actually a ratio of virus. When they test different viruses, they come up with like a ratio of the infectious particles to the regular particles of that virus. So for like poliovirus, they would have, this is the ratio and the number of infectious particles to just the general particles of this virus that exist, which is weird. Another weird thing about viruses. So just something to know a little bit about virus. It's everywhere, and a lot of the particles that exist are not infectious, but some of them are. How do they get activated? This is really interesting, and you can get into a lot of detail with I guess he's a PhD. So Professor Vincent Racanel at Columbia University Medical School, he has published on his YouTube a series of all of his course that he teaches that you could watch for free on YouTube. And that's where a lot of this information comes from. And there is a lot of videos there and very detailed in the actual cell processes and complex. I'm trying to make this a simplified version for you based on the complexity that exists there. But if you really want to know exactly how it works and you're a medical professional or a scientist, go watch that, or just a curious person like myself. So these viruses will infect a host with direct contact with a live, receptive, and permissive host cell. What is receptive and permissive? That means that receptors have to be present in the cells. So not all of your cells have receptors for every virus. So virus can only get into a cell if it has the receptor for that particular virus. And they have to be able to take it in and replicate the genetic material. Being a permissive host cell, that means that it's able to actually replicate the virus. So there are some instances, I guess, of a receptive cell, meaning it has a receptor, but it can't replicate. So those two things have to happen. And there's two ways usually that actually transpires. And there's either an inception, so it attaches to the membrane of the cell and sort of like incepts the genetic material into the cell, or it can actually combine membranes. It shares membrane and then it gets in that way. So there's two different ways that it will take on the genome of the virus. And then once it's in there, then it can go to work. So one thing that's interesting about some virus is that you'll have cells in, let's say, your upper respiratory that are receptive, and in your lower respiratory that are receptive, but not in your skin cells or not in other parts of your body. So every virus is different in where it is received and where it activates. And that can determine what kind of symptoms that you see. But there are also just viral infection symptoms that happen for any virus. So we'll talk about that too. How does it multiply? So in some cases, a virus can get into your system and not multiply at all because your immune system has some defenses built into it that can combat that virus before it has a chance to do anything. You also have something called your intrinsic immune system, and that can defeat the virus as well before it has a chance to actually access the faculties of your cell and replicate. So there's a lot of cases where we're encountering virus every day, all the time, and it's doing nothing because our body is taking care of it. Or you can sustain an infection, and we've all know when we sustain an infection, or maybe we don't. Sometimes there are no symptoms and where our body is going through the process and we don't even know. So what happens is it is going to attach to the cell and inject or combine with your cell and use your cell's faculties to reproduce, since it can't do anything on its own. It does this by using your ribosomes to replicate its RNA and then repackage its contents and replicate and shoot it out, also called shedding. Depending on the type of virus, and there's 7 different types, the RNA may need to be converted. It may be like a DNA or a double-strand RNA or a double-strand DNA. It may need to be converted. Now, coronavirus, this particular coronavirus we're talking about right now is a single-strand RNA plus, which is a designation that means it can just replicate. It doesn't have to convert. It doesn't need extra help in converting its genetic material into what the cell ribosome needs to duplicate it. That's pretty complicated for some people to understand, but basically any type is going to have to convert, and sometimes it brings in different enzymes with it, or it uses your cell's enzymes to convert that into the proper form so that it can be duplicated. And that's, I say that not to confuse, but it also, what it does is when you're running tests, you can test for those enzymes if they're present in certain viruses to detect them instead of trying to detect antibodies or other types of materials to find out if the virus has been present. So if the virus is not defeated by your intrinsic immune system and does go in and start to replicate, then your innate, which is the next level of defense, and your immune system goes into effect. So as those processes are happening for the replication, there are certain chemical reactions that alert your cytokines and other aspects of your immune system cells to do things. And that's where you start to see symptoms of a viral infection. And for many people, it's the same things. So they think, oh, this must be the flu because I'm getting these same symptoms. But it could be any virus causing these same types of innate responses because your immune system is causing it, not the virus. Let me say that again. Your immune system response, it causes fever, causes sore throat, inflammatory aches, and things like that. It's not the virus itself. So this is an important thing to know, that just because these things are happening doesn't mean it's any particular virus. It just means that there is an infection happening and your immune system is going to work. So how are we transmitting this to one another? And this is where there's also some understanding, but a little bit of confusion. And this just is in general for all virus, and we'll get into specifics about coronavirus later. But liquid aerosol droplets are coming into direct contact with the receptive cells in the eyes, nose, and mouth. If liquid aerosol droplets fall on your skin and you don't have an open wound, or it's not near your nose, eyes, or mouth, it cannot do anything because the skin cells on your arm are not alive and they're not receptive. That virus can't attach and do anything on your skin. However, if you touch your eye, which has open cells, or your nose that has mucosal open cells in your mouth, you can. So coughing, sneezing, and talking does create aerosol droplets. Talking is a less known one, but it's very active. They did some studies on this, and talking puts out a lot of aerosol droplets. Interesting to know. Personal contact with the virus particle from surfaces or body fluid cavities directly to receptive cells. If virus exists on a surface, you touch it with your hand and then you touch your nose. Again, direct contact with that virus from a surface or body fluid cavity can also transmit that. That's why there are sexually transmitted diseases, things like that. Another one that's really big is fecal oral contact. That's why washing the hands is so important. And what I found interesting was, even if there are wrapped mints or candies at any public place, a lot of people maybe not washing hands or are not doing a good job of washing hands. Touching those mint wrappers even can transmit virus onto your hands, and then you can touch your nose, eyes, and mouth and transmit that, which is interesting to note. The other way is from vectors. So mosquitoes and ticks can carry virus and infect you directly by biting you and putting that directly into your cells or blood. And then blood contact, and people know about this from HIV, blood contact from transfusions or needles with intravenous drug use or others. So there's a lot of ways to transmit virus, and it depends on the virus, which way it is more likely to be transmitted. In this case, with this particular virus, we're looking at a lot of personal contact and liquid aerosol. That seems to be the issue because this particular virus is a severe acute respiratory syndrome. That means upper respiratory, lower respiratory are the cells that are vulnerable and receptive to this particular virus. There's still more to be known. I'm not going to say that's the only way, but that's what's known right now. All right, what damages or reduces viral particle infection? Viral particles not being alive, they don't have much defense. Their membranes or protein coats are very vulnerable to damage, very vulnerable to damage. You can damage that with direct sunlight, UV radiation from machines, And that's why you will see UV sterilizing done in like beauty salons or other medical environments. They use UV to sterilize things because it renders those particles not able to do their jobs. Soap detergents do the same thing. It disrupts that protein coat enough to where it's easily damaged. High temperatures, humidity, and then contact with copper surfaces, which I found interesting, and I have some studies to show on that. I'll show some reference material here in a second on that. And then these are other things that most mainstream medical is not going to talk about and will probably poo-poo. Oregano oil is great. It's great for antifungal, antiviral, antibacterial. It kills all kinds of things. So does colloidal silver and tea tree oil. Topically, all of these do a good job of rendering viral particles inert and damaging them enough to where they can't do anything since they're actually not alive. Saying that you're killing a virus is kind of not right because they're not alive, but you can definitely damage the viral particles so that they become inert. Killing it, you could say you're killing it if you want to, but they're not alive. Copper surfaces have been shown to reduce transmission. In fact, 100 years ago or more, copper was used on all doorknobs and push plates in hospitals and everywhere else. And I don't know why they changed it. Probably I've heard a theory that they stopped using copper, one, because it was expensive, and two, because it looks tarnishy over time. However, copper disrupts and is known to be antimicrobial in sinks and all kinds of places. Perhaps it's a good idea for us to start reinstituting copper as being in hospitals on doorknobs and things like that, because it does render those things inert. And humidity, and they don't fully understand this all the way, but humidity has an effect on whether or not transmission happens. So there's articles and studies about why there is more transmission during the winter months and then in the summer, and it has something to do with high temperatures and humidity. However, there's also some unknown about there being higher transmission of some viral infections in tropical environments, which doesn't make sense for some of these. So I'm gonna just stop and reference some of this stuff real quick so that you can see where some of this information comes from. Whoops, let me go back. All right, so here's the YouTube microbe TV. This is Professor Raccaniello. I highly encourage you to check out what he has. He's posting every week new stuff. The Jen has all kinds of articles about, you name it, health-wise. Naturopath for you, David Getoff. If you just search his name, David Getoff, literally that, you can find all kinds of great resources on his page. We'll get into more about the actual coronavirus later. So here's some backup information about the sun rendering things inert. Here's something from Harvard about why flu strikes in winter. And again, it has a lot to do not only with there being less sunlight and colder temperatures and drier temperatures, both. Also, we tend to be more deficient as humans in this time of year as well. So that's a good article for that. The Sunlight Institute, I love the name of this place. Using sunlight to sanitize. This is absolutely works. In fact, when I first moved to New Mexico, I found out about this hantavirus, which inhabits the mice up there, and a lot of people were concerned with me cleaning out a dwelling that had a lot of rodent fecal matter in it. And what I found out by researching it was that, one, the virus that is in their feces doesn't really last more than 3 days, and also direct sunlight renders it inert real fast. So sunlight absolutely is great. And that's why I was kind of teasing about going out and sunbathing nude in order to disinfect, but it's actually does work. So you can even go to a tanning bed and achieve this if you live in a place with low light, not to overdo it, because the sun does oxidize, and that's how it actually can affect these living things negatively, because they're more sensitive than us. Sunlight works. This was interesting that obviously if you're in good shape, you're physically fit and active, your respiratory tract infection goes lower. That's kind of a duh one, but there's studies about this. One thing I wanted to also point out is that hand sanitizers aren't really what they state. It actually, there was a study that was done, and I'm trying to find the study so I can post a link to this too, but you would have to rub that alcohol solution and other chemicals on your hands for quite a long time to kill a virus or to render the virus inert. Soap and water does a way better job. These hand sanitizers aren't the answer, and they have harmful chemicals that can absorb into your skin and get into your bloodstream transdermally. Not cool in my book. I stay away from these things. Just wash my hands. Here is more about copper, and copper conducts electricity. I think that might be part of how it works, but I don't know the science behind why it works. I just know that it does, and that they used to use it everywhere, and they should continue. There's another, there's some antimicrobial properties. You can find all kinds of studies about this. And then here's an interesting fact, that it interacts with lipids and opening holes in cell membranes. That's one of the reasons why it affects virus so effectively. So yay for copper. We'll jump back into this in a minute, and I'll give you some more references. We're going to go back to the presentation of this particular point. So let's talk about the coronavirus a little bit, and what happens with these particles and what causes them to stay stable. This was we have to take everything with a boulder of salt. This was a study that was performed in a lab. So anytime you're doing lab studies, you have a very controlled environment. It's not going to be the same as your environment or the real world. So again, these could be plus or minus a little bit of different if you did this at your house or wherever. What's interesting is that the half-life, not alive, but they're calling it a half-life, interestingly enough, in aerosol, 2.74 for the current CoV-2. This is the one that came out in 2003 that really didn't do much. We'll get into that a little bit here in a minute. 2.74 hours could be detected up to 3 hours later, about the same in aerosol. So that's like flushing the toilet puts out aerosol, speaking, sneezing, coughing, that puts out aerosol. Copper contact on these surfaces, you can see it's very much the same, pretty close. What's interesting is copper is very effective. So again, I would love to see all health facilities have copper everywhere. It seems like it would really do a lot of good. Cardboard, I'm not sure why this is on here, maybe because people are getting shipments from things from China in cardboard. Maybe that's why that's there. It's kind of a weird material to have on here. It's showing that the half-life is quite a bit more and detectable up to 24 hours, which is interesting. Not sure why that is. Steel, again, a lot of things are made out of stainless steel. When it's however many times more likely to have infectious abilities for like four, almost 5 times the amount of time on copper. And then plastic seems to be the worst. So plastics, we already are learning, are not awesome. Unfortunately, plastic has proliferated our lives. I don't use plastic dishes. I don't use plastic storage containers and things like that anymore. Use glass. glass isn't on here, which is interesting. I wonder why. I would rather see that over cardboard. Anyway, this is just to take into account. It could be a little bit more or less, but just to know that the stability of that infectious virus particle is not very good. And that means that up to 3 days, even on plastic, it's gone. So that's what I learned about that hantavirus. Same thing. After 3 days, if a mouse poops and it's been 3 days, it's no longer able to do anything. That's cool to know. It will, if somebody touches, now it could go longer if certain conditions are held, if it's very dry and low humidity and certain temperatures are held and that kind of thing. So again, I don't know what the temperatures were in this lab and how they control the humidity. It could change. I think you're safe in 3 days, or maybe if you want to be extra careful, 5 days. But if you're in a dark, cold, dry environment, chances are these numbers would all go up. Interesting. All right, next thing. What causes increased susceptibility? Most of these are kind of common sense, but I just want to reiterate, if you have weakened immune system function, which a lot of people do nowadays, there's chronic illness has pervaded for a lot of people. There are children, there's a lot of children these days that have chronic illness, poor hygiene, obviously washing hands, we already talked about that, but again, poor hygiene and close proximity. Highest risk, it's going to be hospitals. Okay, you have weakened people, you have in some cases poor hygiene, and you have close proximity going on, especially at nursing homes. If you've ever been in a nursing home, which I've been in a lot of them, unfortunately, poor immunity across the board, close proximity, they stand to be hit the worst. That's why you're seeing these nursing homes in Washington. Now, if you were to look back and see, there was a flu, I think it was a flu outbreak that affected some nursing homes pretty severely. So they always vaccinate at nursing homes. They do their best to keep things hygienic, but you have a lot of people that are not in good health in a lot of cases in diapers and these kinds of things. And so the chances for contamination is so high at these places that it's best for them to not have any exposure at all of any infectious disease at all, because they're just so susceptible. Incubation periods, this is interesting. Incubation periods can vary greatly by virus. So influenza is really short, it's only a few days, and you can have a virus and be infectious and not have any symptoms. You can feel symptoms sometimes right away. It just depends on you and what is going on in your body. So looking at the incubation period, especially for this coronavirus, they're saying it's 1 to 14 days for it to have run course through your immune system. Some people are saying longer, but that's more accurate. There's only like an anecdotal instance of something longer than that. So about 14 days. So 2 weeks. That's why they were saying, like, let's shut everything down for 3 weeks. And now they're extending it out even more. Does that make sense? We'll see how it plays out. I think it's good to err on the side of being more cautious. I just think that we should be cautious all the time, not just for this, because there are potential for people who are compromised to have infection all the time. And this is not the only instance of a virus that could kill someone who's in a nursing home. Both my grandma and my dad were in nursing homes and ultimately died from a very minor infection like this. And that is what happens to you when your immune system is so compromised. It means that any small infection could take you down. And often it's not the virus that does it, it's the body's response to the virus. In some cases it is, like the virus gets into your lungs and is replicating and killing a bunch of your lung cells. Well, if your lung function is already not good and the cells are being killed by viral replication, then you have less cells to take in oxygen, you can't breathe, things like that. That can really impact it. So it could also be that your immune response is so severe that that is what ends up doing it. So again, this is just what increases susceptibility. Most people already know what this is. General immune response. So these are the things I was just saying. So you're going to get a fever, a sore throat, maybe aches, headaches. And this is an inflammatory response of your immune system. Nausea, it's not the virus doing it. That's your body responding to the fact that it knows there is a pathogen and wants to do something about it. So it raises the temperature, which usually slows the reproductive cycle of that pathogen. The sore throat would mean that in your upper respiratory, that perhaps that's where the virus is received and is doing damage to your cells. Aches, inflammatory response give you all kinds of aches. And then in some places, in some instances, you can get gastrointestinal nausea and things like that. So just know that this is your body doing it, not the virus. It's pretty crazy. All right, so let's talk about what affects, after the virus, let's talk about your immune system. So what affects the immune system's optimal function? Stressors. Any kind of stressors that can put strain on your immune system. The first one that I think is the most important for us to look at right now is fear. Feelings of danger can activate the fight or flight response of your system. That's going to shut down your immune system completely. If you're in fight or flight, your body's saying, I gotta battle or I gotta run, and you have a response that puts all other things aside. So you're not going to digest well, your immune system's going to be put to the side, everything's going to be put to side. So being fearful is probably one of the biggest stressors that we have to really take a look at. So maybe put on some comedy or do something that reduces that feeling of fear, and just knowing, especially if you're an older person and maybe you're not so healthy, there are some things I'm going to tell you that you can do that will help you to boost your immunity, and hopefully that will ease your feelings of fear. But having a fear response is going to make things really hard. That's one of the biggest stressors that people are dealing with right now. Two, and one of the things I always go to, is nutritional deficiency. Our food supply is absolutely horrendous. It has all kinds of food-like substances in it. It does not have adequate nutrition in it. Nearly all of us in the US are deficient in a variety of minerals and vitamins, essential vitamins. What's an essential vitamin? That's something that your body needs to carry out its day-to-day functions. And a lot of medical professionals say, oh, vitamins aren't necessary, you don't need them. Well, yeah, they're called essential for a reason. And if you do any kind of nutritional study, which I've done a lot, you'll learn that each one of those vitamins has a specific function in the optimal process of your metabolism and life. And they all work together, not one of them works on their own. We're going to talk about specifically about a few of them today that can help. But nutritional deficiency is definitely an issue. And our food, you could say, well, I eat healthy. What does that mean? Do you even know what that means? I used to think I ate healthy as well. Just because the stuff I bought said healthy on the label doesn't mean it's healthy. Unfortunately, we have a misunderstanding of this because our health agencies are telling us to eat on a food pyramid, which is the opposite of what's healthy. And unfortunately, there's a lot of confusion about what things we should be eating and not eating and all that jazz. So if you're looking for that, I would refer you to David Getoff's website. He has a great eating plan to try on his website. It's mainly the elimination of a lot of things that can cause deficiency or that are harmful to eat anyways. And maybe you're reactive to some things that you're eating that can cause a reduction in your immune function. I know for me, I was eating certain foods that were causing an inflammatory response in my body, and I was unable to heal from an injury from a car accident because I have a reactivity to chicken eggs. Could be with you too. So nutritional deficiency, big stress on the body. Electromagnetic fields. This is something that a lot of people think is not true, or there isn't science around it, and there is a ton of science around this. In fact, just open up the insert that comes in the warnings in your most recent cell phone. Most people don't even look at that. They throw it to the side. But I guarantee if you read it, which I have, it will tell you that you shouldn't have it near your body. Why? Well, because the towers are transmitting to your phone all the time, and there's radiation that's happening to you from those frequencies. Wi-Fi is also damaging. Cell phones, Wi-Fi, smart meters, these are transmitting all the time. There are people who have lived in apartment complexes with a bunch of smart meters near their particular apartment where they sleep, and they've developed brain tumors. There's also currently a lawsuit from a woman who lives in, I believe it's San Francisco area or Sacramento, one of the two. Anyway, I have a link to this, who is developed brain tumors from living near a 5G cell site. These things are being put everywhere, and they're real small, but they're high frequency and can cause all kinds of interruptions. We're electrical beings. So when you're running all these frequencies through our bodies, it does disrupt things. And if you want to sleep better and boost your immune system, you should turn off your cell phone, not just airplane mode, but turn it off, because it's still transmitting with Wi-Fi. Turn off your Wi-Fi. And if there is a smart meter near where you sleep in your house or in your apartment complex, get away from it, or ask that you have your water or electricity, it's usually electric companies, have them monitor it directly, like they used to come with the meter reader, and you can get those things actually turned off. You can request that they be turned off because they are very dangerous. There's also other electrical frequencies in your house that are just coming in through your outlets that can affect you. And so I'll give links to other educational resources where you can learn about that, but those are definitely a stressor. There's other toxic loads from all kinds of places that people don't even think about. Mercury vapor from dental fillings, fluoride from tap water, aluminum coming in from deodorants and other things, cadmium, lead, arsenic, pesticides and herbicides that are in food and other products. Polysorbate 80 is in all kinds of things, very dangerous. Food dyes are toxic. Aspartame is in all kinds of things. Chlorine oxybenzones from sunscreens, Tempur-Pedic foam outgassing, other flame retardants on beds and other materials, cookware coatings, plastics, and it goes on and on and on. There's so many ways that we're encountering toxins, and eliminating those from your environment as best you can, and then detoxifying is helpful. So these are things you can do. So remove as many of those stressors as you possibly can from your environment. Some of them you can control and some of them you can't. I can't control if they're spraying toxins into the air and I'm breathing it in, or it's in, you just can't escape all the toxins, but you can remove some of them from your immediate environment. You can also eat as clean and fresh as you possibly can. If there's a farmer's market near you, I encourage you to buy directly from a farmer that's growing things in an organic, clean way. Also, just knowing that raw foods contain enzymes and beneficial bacteria. A lot of your immune function happens in your gut, and you can research this further, but boosting your gut biome with a good probiotic can also help with your immune system. It's also shown in some of the studies I looked from the virology professor that virus activity and bacteria activity and fungal activity, all those biomes, you got the biomes and the viromes, they call them, they interact with each other. And so having healthy, good, beneficial bacteria in there can also counteract some of the other things getting out of whack, fungal, viral, the otherwise. So making sure you have a good one. My favorite and highly recommended is from HLC. It's a high potency. It only has 2 strains in it, and you can buy it at Pharmaca. Getting direct sunlight and high sun times when your shadow is as tall or shorter than you is when your body can actually synthesize vitamin D. Vitamin D has been shown high, optimal levels of vitamin D, 55 to 80 nanograms per milliliter. That's a measurement in the US. It's different in other places. Can help reduce the risk of other types of infections. So we'll talk about the supplements here, and I'll show you some examples of which ones that you can get, but getting a good multivitamin is the first step, in taking it with at least breakfast and dinner, because water-soluble vitamins do not remain in your system beyond 12 hours typically. Fat solubles can stand for 24 hours. So vitamin A, vitamin E, vitamin D, all fat soluble, you can take those once a day. Cod liver oil is going to have those omega-3s, which reduce inflammation and help with all kinds of other things. Vitamin A, we're going to talk about that one specifically because it's very misunderstood. It's super important for your immune system, especially upper respiratory or respiratory in general. Vitamin C is an antioxidant that is going to help with all kinds of oxidative stress. If you have an injury or a surgery or anything else, everyone knows vitamin C is helpful. Taking that every single day and multiple times a day is going to help. And I've seen studies that for this particular virus and others, that intravenous vitamin C at high dose is being used, and that's absolutely effective. But you don't need to do that. You can just take it orally because you can get a lot of vitamin C in your system orally very easily. Whereas other things like vitamin B doesn't really, if you're doing a lozenge, it can sublingually absorb it. Taking it, ingesting it in a tablet doesn't always absorb as well. Vitamin E is going to be a protector. It's going to protect fats and other vitamins from being oxidized in your blood. So getting a good vitamin E, which I'll show you one that I recommend, is also a benefit. And then taking vitamin D3, and then of course magnesium, which is a mineral that helps with all kinds of different things. And then there's an immune booster that I'll show you here in a second. And then another substance that helps if you're already sick, and I'll explain with that. So another thing that can help is just relaxing with loved ones. And I'm going to show you a couple of links to studies about having pets and how that actually helps to boost your immune system, which is nice because I have 3 now and they absolutely do relax. Vitamin A. There's a lot of confusion about vitamin A and misunderstanding about it. I'm going to show you the references for this because I think it's important, especially for medical professionals, to see what the Merck manual says and what some of the published studies say. But it comes also, a lot of people are being plant-based, which is great. I think eating more plants is definitely needed. However, you cannot get real vitamin A from plants. And you'll find people that will argue with this fact, but it's not true. Beta carotene is not real vitamin A. It doesn't convert anywhere near what you need to get. And it comes in the highest potency from the livers of animals and from animal products. It's the best for respiratory issues, especially people who have asthma. And you can take very high doses of vitamin A without any trouble, 50,000 IUs per day or more. I take 10,000 IUs per day every day just to protect. And I went through a period where I failed to replenish my vitamin A supplement when I was traveling for 6 months last year. And guess what? I got the flu, and it was pretty bad for me. My experience was pretty bad. And typically in the last 5 years, if I were to get a virus, it wasn't bad. I was able to fight it off no problem. And I attribute that to the fact that I was deficient in vitamin A because I hadn't been taking it for months. So let me show you a little bit about vitamin A. Whoops, let me go back here. Get into some coronavirus stuff here in a minute. Vitamin A. All right. So vitamin A, let me show you first. Deficiency, and there's all kinds of studies about this, but it definitely impairs immune function. So they had this in these studies done, and this is actually a Chinese study, coincidentally. There is in the Merck manual on vitamin A deficiency, and it shows all kinds of things that go wrong. What's important is that the treatment down here, 60,000 units orally once a day for 2 days. You can do it for more than 2 days. They're saying 100,000 units or 200,000 units for children, which is in some cases to somebody a lot of units. They're even saying to put it for HIV treatment and that sort of thing. This comes from the Merck manual, so this is a medical publication. And I don't often, I like to show medical publications, that's what people believe in. However, a regular person like me recommending it, you might not believe it as much. So there you have it. There's a little bit about vitamin A, and then there was a study here on petting dogs and immune system function, which I thought was pretty cute. And then human-animal interactions and some physiological reactions to that. So there's some studies out there that show this, but you don't need a study to know that being calm and having a positive interaction with a pet is going to be good for you. So I guess use your common sense, but if you need studies, I have them. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the supplements that I personally would endorse. I get no money from doing this. I take these things, I'm just sharing. Super Nutrition makes some really great high potency multivitamins. And again, if you want the benefit of the water soluble vitamins, you need to take them with breakfast and dinner. They have different formulas. I take the women's blend. You will want to know where your iron is at, get a ferritin test to know if you should take the one with iron or without. I take the one with iron. There's a men's blend, and there is a prenatal, which removes some things. Highly recommend this vitamin. It's not expensive, and they sell it one a day, but that's only because people like one a days, but that's not what I would suggest because of the water soluble vitamins not being in your system for half the day. And I don't know if you want to not have them during the day when you're active or when your body's repaired when you sleep. But personally, I'd like to have them 24 hours. So take them with breakfast and dinner. Vitamin A, Carlson's. I buy my cod liver oil from these guys also. They make a great vitamin A. It's super inexpensive. Okay, you can get 250 soft gels for 25 bucks. And if you're taking one of these per day, you probably don't need this many. However, you can buy, I think the 100 is like 10 bucks or something like that. It's very inexpensive. I just gave some of these to a friend of mine who has asthma. I'm hoping that he takes, 50,000 to 100,000 for a few days to get the level up and then continues to take 10,000 a day from now on. Vitamin C, everyone knows it's good. Here is one that I take. It's called Ultimate Ascorbate. It has a few different things in it. I take 3 of these a day, I believe. Tablets. And these have, I think they have 1,000 milligrams per tablet, or for 2 tablets. I'd have to look. But I want to take at least 2,000 milligrams of vitamin C per day. And hopefully, oh yeah, here it is, 1,000 milligram tablet option. So I'm taking 2 to 3 of these per day. And if I'm sick, I'll take more. And you can also get a powder. Where is the powder? This powder is one of the better ones. It's a liposomal, I believe this is the liposomal one. Yeah, so Vitality C, you just mix it in water. It's better than taking, say, Emergency. Emergency, if you look at it, has sugar, which weakens your immune system, as well as some like toxic dyes and other weird preservatives and stuff in it. So rather than putting that crap in there with the vitamin C, just get straight up good vitamin C and you'll be fine. Healthy Origins makes a vitamin D3 in several different concentrations. I actually take the 10,000 I use per day because I had my vitamin D tested in July and it was in the optimal range, but not on the higher end. And I'd rather just have it a little bit higher. So I figured I was taking 7,500 at the time. I decided to up it. It's up to you, but I wouldn't get it tested. If you're going to test your vitamin D, I wouldn't do that until you've been taking it for at least 3 months, because vitamin D isn't one that you can increase significantly right away. It takes time to build up in your system. So you won't really know the effects of this or a magnesium increase for like 4 months at least. So take this, get out in the sun to increase your vitamin D. The others you can increase right away. The A and C you can boost up right away. We'll talk about killers in a minute. Before I do that, elderberry. So if you're already sick, one way to reduce the ability of the virus to spread is to take something like elderberry, and it works differently than you might think. What it does, it binds to those receptor cells so that virus cannot. It's very interesting how that works. And the particular brand of elderberry that's good is called Sambucol, and I think you can find this stuff like pretty much anywhere where you can order it. I wanted to caution you also about ordering supplements from Amazon. Amazon is a flea market of a lot of counterfeit products, including supplements. Please get your supplements directly from the manufacturer if you possibly can, or from a health food store or an online retailer that is not on Amazon. So I use VitaCost, Vitamin Life, or I order directly from the companies if I can, or I buy it at Sprouts or Natural Grocers or Pharmaca or one of these other retailers that gets their product directly from the manufacturer. You definitely don't want to be spending big money on supplements and have the risk of it being not the actual product, which happens. It's very prevalent. So another immune product that I was recommended by my teacher, David Gadoff, is this Mushroom Science Immune Builder. I just watched Fantastic Fungi. I hope you go out and see it. There is some amazing things that mushrooms and fungi can do for all kinds of things. But one of the things is to help mushrooms have medicinal mushrooms, not magic mushrooms, medicinals can help. So this is one that's really great. It's called Immune Builder, and it is another booster that you can take. And so those are just a few of the products. One that I didn't put on here would be Unique E, which is this company. You can buy direct from them. And this is the only form of vitamin E that I would suggest. And they have two products. They have the tocopherols, which is the main one that you would want to take 2 of these per day. And this is going to help protect the fats from oxidizing and all of the vitamins in your blood from being oxidized as well. So this is another great supplement to add to your regimen if you're not taking a vitamin E. And it's a fat soluble. It's going to come in a soft gel. So take 2 of those per day. That should be helpful as well. Let's go back and talk about the actual coronavirus and what I understand at this present time. Now, I sat on a podcast from let me go back to that, show you these guys. So there's these guys, This Week in Virology. I sat on this one. It's 2 hours long, really long. You might not want to sit through it, but I pulled out of that some of the things that are known, and also from some of the other publications of what we know about this particular virus so far. And there's more to understand, and as this unfolds, we'll learn more. Here's what we know. The coronavirus, they're calling it SARS-CoV-2. That's the official name. The genome has been documented. So they were able to find out that it's related to the SARS virus of 2003, which was sourced from bats. And they think that this came from bats. A lot of people are speculating about it coming from meat and that sort of thing. And that's probably not true. Most likely it came from bat guano and somehow got into a, what do they call it? It got into another animal, and they think that could be a carrier animal such as a dog or a raccoon. So that's where they think that it came from and then got transmitted to humans. But we'll find out later. I'm sure they'll try to track it down. Most people, estimated 83%, will not have any knowledge that they have or are shedding this virus to others, because it's typically a mild infection for healthy people. That's what the experts are saying. These virus experts are saying that you won't even know. And a lot of people are freaking out saying, oh, well, for most of us, it's not going to be any big whoop. It's the people that are compromised that really need to protect themselves and to isolate. The rest of us really don't need to be worried too much about going to the hospital or having, ill effects we won't even know that it happened. But it's mainly transmitted from aerosol droplets and direct contact to nose, eyes, and mouth. That's something that is for a fact that we know, and these are the facts that I was able to find. So let's talk a little bit more about the aerosol transmission, because I think that it bears reiterating and being redundant about. So they've identified the coronavirus size, and it only transmits in large droplet aerosols. That means that it cannot travel that very far because of the size that it is and what size of aerosol droplet that it can be transmitted in. Talking does produce aerosols as well as coughing and sneezing. Most people know about coughing and sneezing, but not about talking. So right now, as I'm speaking, aerosol droplets are getting onto my computer. Computer might be one of the dirtiest, and your phone might be one of the dirtiest things. So because of those large droplets, they can't travel that far before they fall down to the ground. And in order for an aerosol that's in the air to infect you, it has to get to your nose, eyes, or mouth. And it's not going to do that if it hits the ground, unless you go rub your nose on the ground or touch the ground and then touch those places. So this is just something to reiterate, is how these aerosol transmissions work. Now, toilet flushing can cause aerosols. So you want to close the lid before you flush, avoid public restrooms, wash your hands thoroughly, and don't touch your eyes, nose, and mouth. And then recirculating air in closed systems can facilitate more aerosol from happening. So if you have, let's say you have a toilet flushing near an air intake that goes out to a bunch of people in a closed environment, then you're going to see things facilitated more, which is why I think in like nursing homes, you have aerosol all over the place, and you have fecal matter and all kind of other bodily fluids being circulated. And I think that might be part of it. And also maybe that could explain something about this cruise ship situation. So let's understand the numbers. I'm going to share with you some resources about the numbers that we know. And again, you have to take all this stuff with a grain of salt, but I want to explain some things that I didn't know about the numbers that might be helpful to lower your fear response, because that hopefully will improve your immune system and just how you feel in general. So where are you getting these numbers? So I'm going to show you Johns Hopkins dashboard. It's pretty cool. That has globally reported numbers. Now keep in mind that not all countries are reporting, and they're not testing the same. And even our own CDC was reporting numbers that weren't confirmed. They were using speculative numbers, which I don't agree with, but that's the best that I can find is from Johns Hopkins. So I'm going to show you that. But before I do, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the other numbers that are being shared. A lot of people don't really know what the difference between morbidity and mortality is. So morbidity is the infection rate. So that just means that somebody was infected. It doesn't mean they died. It doesn't mean that they just know that they're infected. Mortality is a ratio of infected individuals to those that actually died. Now, keep in mind, 83% of us may not even know we have this and have any symptoms at all, and may never get tested whatsoever. So what's being reported right now most likely are people that have symptoms, which according to the experts is less than 20%. So what that means is, let's just say only 20% of infected individuals are getting reported. That means that there is likely 80% more cases out there that are not reflected in this mortality ratio. So let's think about that for a second. If 100 people are infected, but only 20 of those get reported and one person dies, they're using only the people that were reported. So 1 out of 20 people dies, that's pretty high, but then there's 80 other people that didn't get tested because they didn't even know they had it and aren't feeling sick. So again, you have to take some of these numbers with a boulder of salt. Another thing to put in perspective is that flu virus infected this season, infected 15 million people. And right now we're showing less than 200,000. I'm going to show you the numbers right now. And I have links, whoops, let me go back. I have links to all this stuff for you to look on your own when you want to look more deeply at this. So here is the Johns Hopkins dashboard that they are using to show numbers, confirmed cases, all this kind of stuff. And again, this is worldwide, right? And keeping in mind that here we are in the US. Now this number jumped big time in the last 24 hours because I looked at it. There are 4 more deaths. The number went up by 500 when I looked at it last night. Now, one thing that's really interesting is to look at all these countries that have very little cases or that have significant cases, but like not a whole lot of death. Where is one of those? Iran is showing a high number. Germany, for instance, okay, 11 deaths, 5,700 cases. Interesting. Why are they showing a lower death ratio? South Korea actually was showing less before. That's interesting. Italy is showing a much higher number, and then of course China having the most. But you can see there are some places like Belgium, Sweden, like hardly any deaths. It's really interesting to look at. So I don't know what all that means. I'm sure this will get sorted out later. There's also a lot of countries where there's just no cases. What I found interesting was like Mexico, which is right to the south of us. There's a lot of people crossing the border back and forth. I mean, having lived in San Diego for 8 years, I have a hard time believing there's not like a bunch of people going back and forth over there, and they're just not seeing hardly anything. So it's fascinating. It's warmer there, which they say like less transmission possibilities, but there's all kinds of places where there's not anything happening really. Should we all go to Mexico? I think so. Cinco de Mayo is coming up. Let's do this. We're gonna have a real Corona party down there. All right. Forgive me if that upsets you. I have to make fun. So here's another thing that I found interesting numbers wise. I'll show you this. This is from Chinese, like the Chinese CDC basically. So this is showing this province where this initially happened. And what's interesting to notice is that these death rates, if it's kids, there's absolutely no death rates. So the kids are handling this no problem. Kind of like if you had chicken pox, you remember getting that as a kid. They said it's no problem. Your body can fight it off. You just get like, you're sick for a week and you're good. So kids are having no problem with this. Young people, healthy people, almost no problems. It's when you look at old people, 80 plus. So you're seeing in people 80 plus, pretty much a 15% death rate. Now, I would imagine if you put any virus, influenza or anything else up here with people who are 80 plus years old, you're going to see a huge number. Now, what's happening is they're taking this number and averaging it and then giving you that as the death rate, which can be misleading. So it's really smart to look at data like broken down by age group, because that gives you a better understanding of what's really happening instead of taking an average of this, which this number is going to throw off. These two numbers are going to throw off big time because you're seeing 70 plus, you're seeing such a huge increase in death rate. But that's just because people are old, their immune systems aren't functioning. A lot of them are in healthcare facilities or just, they're on their way out anyways. I don't mean to be insensitive, but that's really the truth of the matter here, is that you have people who are aged throwing off these numbers when really, if you were to look at a healthy population, you're going to see no bigger of a ratio than with influenza or other things. So it's really interesting what's happening here. Also, the initial outbreak, you can see, this is reporting from China. Okay, so this is from their agencies, but they're showing, like, obviously in Wuhan, a significantly higher percentage of death ratio for people in Wuhan specifically, and it's throwing off this overall China number big time. But if you look at other areas of China, it was like super different. So what's interesting is that that particular area had a higher death ratio initially, but that's even gone down to be the same as the other areas. So what is the explanation for that? And according to some people, it's because when a virus initially happens, they're not prepared to handle it, and it can be more virulent, or Some people say that it has something to do with the launch of 5G in the area, and that those frequencies are causing some of this sickness itself, or are exacerbating what this has. So I don't know what the truth is. These are just some things that I've heard. But it is interesting to look at this information and say, oh, the freak out happened here, and where the initial thing was. But if you look at like what it's settling out to be, it's really not what was initially happening. All right, can this coronavirus cause damage in the body? Well, it does kill cells while it replicates. So if it's getting into your lungs or your upper respiratory, as it multiplies, it does destroy the cells. So it does kill your cells, and that can cause issues in the lower respiratory, which was why some people are having trouble breathing. Another explanation with that 5G, which is interesting, is that 5G, the particular frequency that 5G puts out causes oxygen molecule electrons to spin, kind of like when you turn on a microwave and it makes water molecules spin. That's how it heats up your food. It's similar in how it behaves. So some people think that oxygen, the effects of those waves on oxygen molecules could have something to do with it too. I don't know if that's true. That's just something else to consider that could have caused more issues. But this particular virus is going to cause death to cells that it infects. They call it severe acute respiratory syndrome because of what it does in the lower respiratory. And then your immune response really is what the symptoms, and you may suffer from a overactive immune system more than from the virus itself, which is kind of interesting. And that happens in other types of viral infections as well. So these are some other interesting facts just to share in general about the previous SARS outbreak, which came and went without much impact. Now, this is different, and we'll see what it shakes out to be. But back in 2002 and 2003, there ended up only being 8,000 cases and 774 deaths in 17 countries. And most of it happened in China, but the following 2 years, it was absolutely hardly anything. So it just like came and it went really fast, and something happened and then it was gone. So I'm hoping that this one comes and goes pretty quickly too. We'll have to see how it goes. Another thing that I find really weird, and I'm trying to understand how this factors in to especially what's going on here in the US and just globally also with the financial markets, is that there were pandemic bonds that were issued in 2017, and they pay out millions of dollars to investors if a pandemic happens before July, kinds of things, just kind of like when the Obama thing happened and they had the stimulus package they had to do right now, and they tack on all kinds of things to that and they get it pushed through because no one's going to oppose it because there's an emergency. The Fed just lowered the rate to 0. So lending is going to increase. It already was increasing, but it's increasing even more. And I don't know what the implications of that is, and if that's really good to have people borrow more money right now. It scares me a little bit. Like, why would we do that? And I think that they're creating this. You can't make money, you can't go anywhere. All these things are shut down. And then we're going to lend you a bunch of money to live on or to do with your business or this or that. And then what happens? And then what if the economy does go down and then now you're in debt more and they can take your stuff again? Like what? I don't know. I don't know what it means. And then also like a ton of CEOs of big, huge companies all have stepped down in the last year, with the most recent one being Bill Gates. I don't know what that means. I don't know what that is. Do they know something that we don't know? What is the purpose of that? Why are so many of these CEOs like cashing out their stocks and leaving the company? It's really weird. So these are just other weird things that are going on. I don't know if they're related or not, but it's just something I wanted to throw out there. And these are actual facts. This is not me making up things, but you could extrapolate all kinds of different things if you wanted to from this. We'll have to watch and see what this ends up being. So in conclusion, I just want to say thank you for anyone who's watching. Do this because I care. And these are the recommendations: is weakened and unhealthy people should not be exposed to any virus if possible. So keeping them away from it is going to be the best defense. Boosting your immune system, improving your health in general is the best thing you can do at removing stressors and toxins from your environment and from your body. Get out in the sun whenever you can. I know in some areas there's no sun right now. Take a vacation to Mexico, maybe, where there's no coronavirus. Get copper doorknobs and replace push plates for doors, please. If you work in a healthcare facility, push for this. I think it's worth it. And then avoid touching anything in public without washing your hands. And then don't touch your viral entry points. So nose, eyes, mouth, and nether regions if you're a lady. So that said, I want to thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. I'm going to be doing a series after this. The next thing that I think I'll be diving into will be about detoxifying. And there's a lot to that. So that will be actually a series about detox, because there are already so many things we have in our bodies and around us. And so starting with removing the things that you easily can, and then how do you get things out that are in your liver and your kidneys and everywhere else in your body and your blood. So I'll be helping people understand what that's about, why you would do it, and how to do it. And my goal is to really help you clean out your system and have it filter better for you. So that will also boost your health and your vitality. So thanks again for watching. It's the Naked Truth Babe here with a little bit about virus and your immune systems. Thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful. Take care.